Welcome to The Health Advocate, a podcast that breaks down major health news of the week to help you make sense of it all. I'm Zoe Rothblatt, Director of Community Outreach at GHLF, and we have a special episode for you today, and I'm passing the mic to my colleague Eric Stone, who'll be hosting this episode. Hey, Eric.
Thanks, Zoe. Welcome to the first episode of our advocacy training series, where we explore how you can get started on your own journey with patient advocacy and learn from the stories of other experienced patient advocates. My name is Eric Stone, and I am the Global Healthy Living Foundation's Associate Director of Learning Experience Design. I'm so excited to be co-hosting this webinar today with Kendall Griffey from the Obesity Action Coalition. Kendall?
Hi, thank you for the introduction, Eric. I'm Kendall, Communications Manager with the Obesity Action Coalition. OAC is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to improving the lives of individuals affected by the disease of obesity through education, advocacy, and support.
Thanks, Kendall. Today we are joined by Jody, Alicia, Yolanda, and Judy, 4 patient advocates from around the country who will be sharing their stories with us today. Maybe we could start out by learning a little bit more about them. Could you please introduce yourself, where you're from, and share a few sentences about how you got into advocacy work?
My name is Judy Nagy, and I live in Sandusky, Ohio, which is on the shores of Lake Erie, halfway between Cleveland and Toledo. And I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis at the age of 25, and that was about 44 years ago. So I started my advocacy work about 14 years ago with the Global Healthy Living Foundation, and I'm also a Platinum Ambassador with the Arthritis Foundation. I have been to Washington and to Columbus, Ohio, participating in support for legislation to help all people with chronic illnesses and many medical needs. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I've met a lot of nice people, and it's really wonderful.
Thanks, Judy. Jody, do you want to go next?
My name is Jody Quinn. I live in Plymouth, Massachusetts, lifelong Massachusetts resident, originally from Cambridge. I have psoriatic disease, psoriasis, and psoriatic arthritis, diagnosed about 20 years ago after 15 years of misdiagnosis. About 8 or 10 years ago, as my disease progressed, I started looking for a community where I could find, I didn't know anybody else who had psoriatic arthritis. So I, through online searches, found the National Psoriasis Foundation and got involved with them as a volunteer for events and fundraisers. And then one day they said to me, how would you like to go to Capitol Hill and speak to all the legislators and then go to the FDA for hearings? And I said, you are crazy. I can't do any of that. So I went, and on the plane back, I never stopped. I've just been going since then. And so I've been advocating with them for about 8 years, along with AI Arthritis and Patients Rising and other organizations, because if one is good, 10 is better. And I absolutely love it.
Alicia, do you want to go next?
Yes, my name is Alicia Smith, and I'm from Lakewood, Ohio. I'm a suburb just west of Cleveland. I am a nurse, and I became a patient advocate almost by accident. I started on a health journey as a patient with obesity, and I started researching on social media for a community just for support and education, and came across the Obesity Action Coalition and really resonated with me what they were doing and how they were trying to get things moving forward with health advocacy. And I just happened to reach out by email to share my story with them, not necessarily meaning to be an advocate, but they reached out to me with an advocacy opportunity. And I realized that it was a really great opportunity and decided to take a chance. And it's kind of snowballed from there with different chances and opportunities. And I realized it was something that I really loved and wanted to do and really grateful for.
I'm Yolanda. I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I was a fledgling supporter of issues such as weight bias campaigns and issues concerning healthcare access to people who are experiencing the disease of chronic obesity. I jumped into the arena because I myself experienced the disease of chronic obesity. I was afraid to jump in because I listened to the false narrative of what I was and was not capable of achieving. And I let that keep me back. But then I did finally emerge as a patient advocate with a story to share, and my voice amplified. And the reason I was able to do that, because I was able to get involved with an organization called Obesity Action Coalition. And they were the ones to help me learn how to use my voice and to share my story in order to assist people who are experiencing the same thing that I was, the disease of chronic obesity. And with sharing my story and using my voice, I hope to change the outcome for people who are experiencing that and advocate for them and for myself at the same time by doing that.
Thank you, Yolanda. I will pass it over to Kendall to introduce our first discussion topic today.
Thank you, Eric. So let's dive right into getting started with advocacy. What first steps should someone interested in doing patient advocacy work take to get started? Let's start with Judy.
I believe that you reach a point in your journey with your disease where you feel comfortable sharing stories about yourself and meeting fellow people that are dealing with the same issue you are. And when you have already been through all the tests and the medicines and the surgeries, you really have an understanding that a lot of people don't know about and they have a fear for. The first step is to find an organization that is connected to the issue that you're dealing with. And nearly all of them are involved in legislation issues. I have worked with 2 organizations, and both times when I went to Washington and when I went to Columbus, Ohio, we were joined by 59 other organizations who were all in support of the same issue that we were. So it takes a village to get things done. And when we work together, we can make life easier and a little bit better. I mean, we can't take away the pain and we can't take away the mental stress of living with a chronic illness, but working together, we can make great things happen.
Thank you, Judy. Now let's pass it to Jody.
I agree with Judy. Finding a nonprofit or a patient group, they're out there for whether it be arthritis or obesity or Crohn's or diabetes, MS, pretty much any medical condition. They have a nonprofit or a group, and they all have advocacy groups within them that will provide training and access. But not everybody is an online type person. So another option is even if you ask at your doctor's office and you say, gee, I'd like to get involved with it. Sometimes they have good suggestions. And one day, just when I was up at the State House in Boston, waiting to speak to the member, I was talking to the staff there and I said, what do other people do? And they came out with some great suggestions of things for me to do that I never would have thought of and even have heard of with these other groups. So that's another option. Or hospitals have advocacy groups too that you can join. Schools, senior groups, depending on how old you are. So there's a lot of avenues out there for people, whether they want to jump in full time or maybe just write an article here and there. So there's a lot out there that people can try.
Thanks, Jody. Those are some great tips. Alicia, what are your thoughts?
I would say I have a couple suggestions. I would say the first step is just having a passion for it. A big part of it is just being very just genuine and passionate about the topic. I think people will really see and connect to that. And then using that passion, and I think social media can really be a good tool to kind of find your community and find organizations that may be out there that inspire you and that you connect with, that you kind of share in their mission, that you'd like to join. And then you can look on their website, and usually that organization has a advocacy page. Advocates are really needed, so usually they have an advocacy page on there with contact information. And if they don't, you can use like their contact form or an email on a contact page and just email. At the time, I didn't know what an advocacy page was, so I just used an email. So really any way, and someone will most likely get connected to you.
Thank you, Alicia. Now I'll pass it to Yolanda.
I agree with Alicia. Having a passion and a purpose driven behind your advocacy is very important. At least it was for me and is for me, because it carries me through when things get difficult or when the process seems daunting. So, yes, having that purpose driven behind my advocacy work, volunteering in the area where my interest lies, that's very important. Seeking out other people who are in that area, surrounding myself in that space, that's important. Just seeking out those people in that area, that's important. Researching information about what I'm interested in, that's important too. Yeah, just finding all the information that I can about what subjects that I'm interested in advocating for. Self-education, like they said, go to websites. There's so much information out there that you can find for yourself. So that's what I would suggest doing.
Yeah, thank you. Those are some really amazing tips that each of you shared. Now, how did you overcome the fear of not knowing enough to do advocacy work? Judy, we'll start with you.
I don't think I ever really had any fear. Working with the Global Health Living Foundation was very easy. They provided all the materials that we needed to prepare ourselves for being a patient advocate. And when I joined the 50-state network, they reached out to me and we connected in Columbus, Ohio the first time. And they actually had another person there that was helping us to put our story together so that we could make a presentation to the legislators. I testified before the state Senate on Health and Human Services in Ohio for biosimilars when I first started. And they gave me the courage because they were so supportive. And that's why it's important to be part of an organization that provides you the materials you need. And the camaraderie is amazing, especially with the Global Healthy Living Foundation. They have it all together. These people are really good at what they do, and they help you prepare. They have staff that reach out to you when you have any fear, and you can write a paragraph and they'll turn it into a story. But really, I believe you need encouragement from your fellow patients as well, and your family and friends, because we're not alone. And I've come across so many people that they're afraid to make a change. They're afraid to take the next step. And I encourage them and I give them suggestions. And I've had a lot of people that were just so appreciative. So it's just taking that first step, reaching out, talking to other people, and knowing that your courage is going to make life better for you and for everybody. Because my motto is, we're all in this together, and together we are stronger.
Wow, Judy, that's incredible. Thank you for sharing. That was very beautifully said. Now I'll pass it to Jody. How did you overcome the fear of not knowing enough to do advocacy work?
I was definitely afraid. For me, I was actually brought in kicking and screaming, dragged in to my first advocacy event saying, there's no way, I can't do this, I can't talk to these senators, and I don't want to go. And they were like, you're going. So I went. And it was great. All this fear. Got to meet with my senator, and I think she could see I was scared, and she just put her hand on my arm and said, you'll be fine. And I just told my story. And I realized it isn't how much you know, it's you. It's your story. That's what you have to tell. Your story is the most important thing in advocacy. And even if 20 people have the same thing as you in the room, there's still 20 different stories to be told. So the encouragement I received that first day, and then, every meeting I go to since then, before you go in, everybody's like, you got this. to each other, There's a lot of support along the way. So after that first meeting, I'm not going to say each time you get a little anxious, before you go in, but the fear just sort of melted away when I saw, it's not us against Goliath. It's, us for ourselves, and everything we say is important. So, and there is no right or wrong. Your story is never right or wrong. You always need to tell your story. So that's how I overcame my fear.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing. Alicia, I'll pass it to you.
I definitely initially had a bit of a fear as well. And then I quickly realized when people were telling me that really it's the advocates that are making the impact in the meetings. It's the personalization. It's not really the facts and figures so much when you're trying to make a difference, but it's that personalization that's really connecting to people. When someone can really relate and put those facts and figures, seeing how it works into an everyday life, really, makes a difference, and seeing how it plays out in, the every modern day situation and how it's affecting people's lives. Really started to make me feel comfortable and know that when I'm speaking, I'm probably actually really being heard. It's not just someone twiddling their thumb at a PowerPoint presentation. So that really helped make me feel comfortable and made me feel like I was actually making a difference.
Definitely. Thank you. Yolanda, what about you?
I came from a place when I first started of imposter syndrome. I believed that my story didn't matter. How could I make a difference? To being surrounded by advocates. My experience with advocates is that they're the best hype people ever. They lifted me up. They supported me. They helped me like I said, find my voice and helped me instill in me that I mattered. My story mattered. My story could help change and make a difference. So, it's who you surround yourself with, and you'll find your inner story is important and that you can too make a difference. So that's how I dealt with my imposter syndrome and my feelings that I didn't matter or my story didn't matter. So it was a rough start, but I increased my belief in myself, and the things I'm doing now are something. Being on this panel wouldn't be possible if without starting my advocacy work. So it's a good path to start, and just take the baby steps. The possibilities are endless. You don't know where you're going to end up, but it will be a good start and a good place. I promise.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing your answers to that. Throughout all of the stories you've shared so far, I've noticed the common theme of community. I'm curious, if you had to describe the patient advocacy community in one word, what would it be? And let's start with Jody.
Supportive, I think, is there's a million words to describe them, but that's what I get out of the community. I get support in every possible way that I could ever need.
That's wonderful. Yolanda, what about you?
I would say light workers, giving, altruistic, light workers. That's my word.
I love that. Judy.
I would say the best part about it is the fellowship and being comfortable talking to somebody that has experienced another chronic illness, no matter what kind of chronic illness it is, because I haven't come across anybody that isn't dealing with something. And fellowship makes a big difference in that. The support, the camaraderie, the sharing of stories, and it's just so rewarding to know that you can help each other through a lot of problems in your journey, because most of these problems that we're living with are lifelong. You make so many good friends when you're a patient advocate. It's fulfilling. It's heartwarming. And at Global Healthy Living Foundation, we call it the beacons of life and health. Beacons of health. That's what we are.
That's fantastic. What a beautiful answer, Judy. Thank you. Alicia, what about you?
I would say I describe it as hopeful. It's positive, hopeful, and just how they're working for change just gives me a lot of hope. So hopeful would be my word.
These are all great words. I'm feeling very warm and fuzzy just hearing all these words like friendship and light workers passed around here. I think these are all such great words to describe the advocacy community. I'm curious if maybe we could elaborate a little bit more on how important things like fellowship and mentorship and friendship are to being a patient advocate, especially in those first few steps of getting started. Yolanda, do you want to start us off?
Sure. For me, mentorship is very important. Mentors offer insight into things that I'm going through that I need help with. Their experience is invaluable because this is still new to me still, and they can, like I said, offer their insight and help me through the tough situations and make the road a little less bumpy for me. And just the not walking the road alone, it's comforting and it makes it not so lonely. And there's power in community, just as she was saying, there's power in that. And I get strength in that. And it's very important. So I'm grateful for that. I have a little community of my advocacy, and at the OAC, there's people that I can call and connect with if I have questions, and I'm grateful for that. I had questions. I was offered to sit on 2 local boards, a Medicare and a Medicaid board, and I wasn't sure if I was able to do that. I was a little bit of the imposter syndrome was coming in. But this was an opportunity for me to do advocacy work at the local level and make change for people who are experiencing the chronic disease of obesity. And I just needed that little wisdom from a mentor, whether or not if I'm ready for this. And I was able to speak with Crystal from OAC, and she says every bit helps, and everyone needs a place at the table. So that was a little push that I needed, and I accepted the positions, and I'm glad I did. I feel like I'm making a real change. And yeah, mentorship is important, and I'm glad I have mentors. And one day I hope to be that to someone else. So you pass it along, and it's a chain. It's giving. It's natural order, I think, in this community. That's what it's supposed to be anyway. And I hope that wasn't too long answer. So mentorship is very important. And I hope to do it for someone else one day.
Thank you for sharing, Yolanda. Judy, why don't you go next?
I consider myself very fortunate because I had a lot of mentors from the very beginning, and they led me on the path to being confident that I was going to be able to live with this disease. You have to trust your doctor. If you don't trust your doctor, then you're going to have a lot of trouble dealing with your illness. So the nursing staff, everybody involved with your journey makes a big difference. You have to trust the nursing staff, and you have to be self-confident that you can do everything that they ask you to do and be able to speak up if you're not comfortable with what it's doing for you, because they're trained to help us, and that's your first line of defense. From there, that mentorship helped me immensely, and I went full throttle, full speed ahead. And I did the research. I'm signed up for my patient portals at all of my healthcare facilities. And I read all my reports before I even see the doctor for a follow-up. So you have to be prepared. That is a relationship that is probably even greater than a marriage. Hopefully it's a good marriage when you're with a good doctor. And I've lost a couple that retired. I'm not happy with some of the doctors that I'm dealing with right now, and I may have to travel to go see somebody that can help me. better than the ones that I'm dealing with right now, but I'm grateful for my rheumatologist.
Jody, I'll pass it to you next. How important is mentorship to your experiences with patient advocacy?
Mentorship is what kept me in advocacy. Like I said, that first time I went, I was a little scared. But after that, a lot of the agencies that you work with, they do provide you training before you go in to any type of a session. Um, but it's what happens after you strike up this friendship, and I'm the new person, and your eyes are aglow because you're like, oh, look at this person, they're talking with such ease, and they understand, and everybody's listening to them, and they've been doing it for maybe 10 years, 15 years. So after the meeting, I would strike up friendships with these people, and they would there were just a wealth of information, and you realize, they tell you you can do it. You need their assistance. They're the people you can call. Oh, we have this issue in Massachusetts, and I just can't figure out how to write this letter. Well, they'll help. They'll read the letter for you and say, maybe you should word it this way or that way. And it's almost like a professor student relationship. And I think it's vital to you can never learn enough. So no matter how many people, and even now I'm doing it probably 8 years solid of advocacy. Now I'm at the point where if I go to a meeting, they'll send a new person in with me. But there's nothing greater than when I post something online, one of these people that I thought were my mentors will say, "Great job, Jody." And I'm like, it's like a pat on the back from the professor, So I think it's very important to have a mentor, and it doesn't even have to be somebody within your own. I'm part of the Arthritis Psoriasis Society, but when you go to this advocacy events, you're not just with that group. You're meeting advocates from around the country, around the world, all different groups, and you learn from all of them. So mentorship is vital to any successful advocacy program.
Thanks, Jody. Those are really powerful words. Alicia, I'll turn it to you now.
Sure, thank you. I do believe that mentorship is very important. Just kind of bouncing ideas off of each other and kind of a guide, just because, when you're new to it, you're not really sure really what you're doing. So I've had several and been inspired by people kind of learning what it's all about. And even just someone to be honest with you, and just even if maybe you're doing something a little wrong, or maybe not necessarily wrong, but something that could be better, them just kind of showing you the ropes there too, because, you're in it to grow also. So, I'm fully open to learning a new way of doing something. I've learned better ways of doing things too, learning better word choices for things, maybe even seeing some of my own biases in things and learning and growing too. So that's been really nice. And someone who has been living that topic and in that area for a lot longer with more experience is the perfect person to kind of show someone the ropes. And I think a mentor is a perfect person for that. So I'm really grateful, and I think it's a really important part of advocacy.
Wonderful. I will pass it to Kendall for our next topic.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, we've talked a lot about that warm, fuzzy feeling that Eric mentioned that you get with advocacy. It's fulfilling, it's inspiring, but sometimes it can be a little bit challenging. So I'm curious, how did you overcome the frustration of how slow advocacy work can be sometimes? Let's start with Yolanda.
I haven't actually overcome that yet. That's something I work on every day and try to enrich and improve my processes around that. But I found that, again, that advocacy community is the foundation of everything. And being able to refer back to people who have been doing this and who have done it and know the process, and that is so valuable and important. So I refer back to my advocacy community, and they help me get through those times when I think, what is the point? Or am I really making any progress? Am I really helping? So sticking with that community and referring back to that is important for me to continue this work.
Thanks, Yolanda. That was very beautifully put, and I love the idea of a reframing rather than overcoming, as a means to an end. So let's pass it to Alicia. Alicia, how do you overcome any frustrations that might come with advocacy work?
I just try to focus on the positive and just look at the silver lining, and just remind myself of what went well and not get frustrated with what didn't, and just make adjustments and shifts and just keep going. But yeah, I'm just definitely just stay motivated, positive, and know that good things take time and patience.
Thank you for that. Jody, what about you?
When I first started advocacy, maybe the first year or so, I was naive enough to think I was going to go in, ask for something, they're going to say yes, and that was it, and the bill was going to be paid and we're done. And I started to get frustrated. And then in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, they have this program called Citizens Legislative Seminar. And my senator said to me, I think you should go to this. You have to be referred by your state senator. It's a 2-day program at the State House run by all the senators, and they explain to you what the Senate's about, how bills are passed, and all this stuff. So one of them was a real hearing, and we had one bill that they were working on. It had 160 amendments. And I remember it to this day. I'm like, how can you do anything else? They're like, we can't. It's going to take us 3 days just to get through this one bill. So from that day forward, I always had that in the back of my mind, that everything takes a long time because it's a process. It's not just a one-step job. And now I consider every single step along the way important. Maybe I'll go in for a hearing one day, a meeting, and they won't pass it, but they heard my story. The next time I go in, they remember who I am, they remember my story. So I consider every single step along the way important. And then, of course, the end result's the best. But it may take 2 years, it may take one of the things in Massachusetts 6 years, but along the way, we informed a lot of people, educated a lot of people. So I don't really get upset about the length of time. As long as people are listening to us and hearing our stories, I think it's important.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jody. What about you, Judy?
Once you become enveloped in the advocacy world, I do believe that you learn patience as you go. There are times when you feel frustrated and you just have to move on to the next challenge. It's really up to the patient themselves to make a change. If you're dealing one-on-one with patients, legislation, as we all know, that takes forever. And I can tell you that when I went with the Global Healthy Living Foundation to support the bill for biosimilars in Ohio, that was about 12 years ago. And to this day, biosimilars are still not available in Ohio. And what they had told us was the bill passed and it was signed by the governor. But then months later, we heard that it was held up because the state medical board had to put everything together, the parameters for coding and billing and pricing. And we thought, okay, that'll take a while. So months go by, and the next reason they had was that now we have drug companies that are challenging each other over who's going to have distribution rights in the state. And I wanted to be one of the first to get the biosimilars when they were available. And they're still not available. So years and years and years can go by before something good happens. Even if you reached a goal with your organization or with an interest or with a patient. And like Grandma always said, patience is a virtue. And sometimes you just have to wait it out. But the rewards are so awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Judy.
To wrap up our episode today, I'd love to know, to those who are listening right now, who are considering starting their own patient advocacy journeys, what's one piece of advice that you would give them? And let's start with Judy.
Find the organization that is connected to your chronic illness, participate in their advocacy programs that they have available, reach out to other people who may already be involved with organizations. And once you make that first step, you will never go back. It's so rewarding.
Perfect. Yolanda, what about you?
I would give the advice, you don't need to rewrite the whole playbook. There's people out there who've been doing this, who how it works in the best ways to approach it. Not that what you're bringing to the table is not important, because your innovations are important as well. You could bring a whole new spark to the whole cause, but you just don't have to start from scratch. There are things that are being done that have been done previously, so you don't have to feel that overwhelming need to figure everything out, because there's things in place already. So that gives you time to focus on how you can best use your gifts and talents to further the cause that you're interested in advocating for.
Very inspiring, Yolanda. Thank you. Alicia, what about you?
My advice would be that if this even sounds just even remotely interesting to you, I would just try it. Advocacy is really needed. It's a really powerful tool to bring change. And I think you would most likely surprise yourself and be really happy that you did try it. I know I was really surprised by how much confidence it gave me and how much joy it brought to my life. So I really would encourage you to give it a try.
Just the fact that you may be thinking about advocacy means you already have that little spark inside of you. But, don't be afraid to start small. You don't have to start out your first year being on 2 boards and going to Capitol Hill 4 times a year and, being on steering committees. No, you don't have to start out. You can start out with simple as joining an advocacy group and signing on to send letters to your legislators, or going to a local event that there might be and just speaking to other patients. It can start small. And patient groups are definitely the easiest gateway to it. But like I said, if you're thinking about it, do it, because as Yolanda said, you get so much out of it that you never expected. You almost feel selfish. You're thinking, oh, I was doing this for everybody else, but it just makes me feel so good inside to do this. And I have never heard of anybody who started advocacy and said, I got nothing out of it, I'm never going back. You always get something out of it. But don't be afraid to start small. If that's what's holding you back is, I don't know if I can do it, because, I still work. Not, some people work, some people don't work. I work full time, so I have to fit this into my daily life. So there's something out there for everybody. So just give it a try. You won't be disappointed.
It's wonderful, Jody. Thank you all for joining us today. This has been such an inspiring discussion, and I want to thank you each individually for sharing your stories with us today. I think we had some really great stuff.
It was nice meeting all of you. We're all in this together, and together we are stronger.
Thank you for this opportunity today to talk about advocacy, because I never want to stop talking about advocacy. And today's a perfect example of the community. I didn't know these other 3 advocates before today, and now there's 3 more advocates that we're all friends. So thank you. And if you're thinking of trying advocacy, do it.
Thank you, everybody. It was really nice meeting all of you. And thank you, Crystal, again, for inviting me to be a part of something again. I very much appreciate it. And thank you to Eric, Ben, and Kendall for helping out today. Appreciate that.
And thank you to my co-host, Kendall Griffey from the Obesity Action Coalition. It's been wonderful facilitating this discussion with you today.
Yes, Eric, it absolutely has. And thank you to each of these advocates. It was incredible hearing your stories and sharing your insights. So appreciate it so much.
We hope you enjoyed this special episode of The Health Advocates, a podcast that breaks down the major health news of the week to help you make sense of it all. And before you go, click on the link in the description to join our 50-state network so you can make a difference and join our amazing team of advocates. If you liked this episode, give us a rating, write a review, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. You can listen to all of our podcasts at ghlf.org/listen. Once again, I'm Eric Stone, and join us for our next episode of our advocacy training series.
Bye.